Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Woodburn Accountants and Advisors webinar series on doing business in China successfully. Today's topic is 10 reasons why some businesses are not successful in the Chinese market. Before we begin today's presentation, I would just like to go through a couple of admin issues. So the first one is the use of a VPN may be required by those of you that are based in mainland China due to the wonderful Great Firewall. I am also currently on a VPN, and I had a little bit of trouble getting it up and running today. So there may be some technical issues along the way. Please don't exit the webinar. As soon as I have the technical issue solved, I will be returning to complete the presentation. So what you should have seen when you launched into the GoToWebinar system is you would have been prompted to set up your audio, and you have the option of choosing your computer audio, which is free of charge, or going ahead, if you are having a lot of technical difficulties, to using a landline or mobile phone. If you're using the phone call option, then you will see this pop up. On your screen, you will find the telephone. You have to just click on the telephone section and you'll get a phone number, access code, and audio pin to dial in. In addition, if you have any questions or comments, please don't be shy. Add them into the questions section of the control panel highlighted on this screen. We will be having a 10 to 15 minute Q&A at the end of today's presentation. I will be primarily answering the questions asked on our registration form. We've had a couple that have come in. And if we have time, I'll move on to questions asked during today's presentation. If we do not get to your questions, please don't leave the webinar. As soon as the recording has ended, I will be answering each of you one by one. If you do have to leave immediately, which by all means I understand, I will email you directly. So let's test the system. If you could all click on the raise your hand button on the control panel, that will allow me to know that you can hear me. Great. If you could re-click the hand button, that will also let me know you're listening in. So let's begin today's session. For those that haven't been able to join us on the previous webinars, allow me to introduce who we are. Woodburn Accountants and Advisors is specialized in inbound investment to China and Hong Kong. We establish, manage, and administer companies in China and Hong Kong to meet our clients' specific requirements, which include market entry, cross-border investment, tax optimization, and corporate restructuring. Our clients are all international companies focused on the Asian market, with specific focus on China and Hong Kong. Our clients are usually either manufacturing in China, exporting from China, importing and distributing into China, or offering a variety of services locally. They range from startups to small, medium-sized companies to all the way up to multinationals and publicly listed firms. Just a small disclaimer, the presentation of today is a general view and primarily my opinion as to why companies are not successful in the Chinese market. If you have any specific questions or specific needs that you would like me to discuss with you, I'd be happy to. You can contact me directly via email or call our office. My name is Christina Cola-Coluccia. I'm the head of business advisory. Since 2003, I've been advising clients on their market entry and expansion needs within the Chinese mainland. 3 points I've learned in the last 15 years of doing business in China is I've learned to have a great deal of patience, which is really something you will need when you go into the market. I've learned to have an eye on detail, because without having an eye on detail, you'll find that mistakes occur, particularly when it comes to finance. And I've learned that when issues arise or problems arise, you shouldn't be looking for someone to blame. You should be looking at how to solve the problem. And this is something that's a very Western-oriented mentality. We always look for somebody to blame when a problem arises. The goal in China is, because of its complexity, you really just want to solve the issue. You want to find a loophole and you want to get it done. So the goal for me today is to educate you on how to prevent your business from not growing. It's something where I want to be able to inspire and inform you and not instill any type of fear in you in what goes on in the Chinese market. So like I said, we'll start off today's presentation. Excuse me. So the topic for today is 10 reasons why some businesses are not successful in the Chinese market. And I've listed in the agenda the 10 items that we're going to go through one by one. What I want to highlight on this slide, though, is the fact that being not successful does not mean that the company has exited from the market. So I just want to clarify that definition, but rather that it was not capable of growing at the rate that it had hoped to. So yes, we've all seen and heard the stories of foreign investors that have actually exited the market because either there just was no market for their product or service, or they just weren't successful, or they were sued, or they went bankrupt. I mean, all of these serious worst-case scenarios do arise in China. But today's presentation is not focusing on that category of client. I am looking at companies that just have not been capable to grow, and the reasons why they haven't. Now, there are millions of smart business ideas, millions of companies that are looking to set up their businesses and deliver a product and service. China has had its fair share of exciting startups, which means really that the culture here in China is ripe for business and it's ripe for success. Yet, obviously, we hear many companies who have successfully set up their businesses, they've launched their businesses, but have become extremely frustrated by their inability to grow. And for one reason or another, their progress has slowed and they're looking for something to kickstart them towards expansion. Now, in a surprising number of cases, it's either the business owner, the overseas head office, who is generally responsible for the stagnation of the company. The inspiration, the single-mindedness, the perseverance, and the attention to detail that breathes life into the business in the first place can sometimes become the millstone that drags it down. And it's important then for all companies to be aware of the traits within themselves that can lead to this arrested development of their company. So what are these deadly leadership traits that stifle business growth? And in this webinar, we're going to look at these 10 common problems, which individually or combined can keep a business forever knocking down on expansion. So the first reason is looking at the refusal to adapt. I love the TV show The Office, so I wanted to add that here. And I love the saying right there, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. False. Improvements are always possible. If you've launched your business in China on the strength of one brilliant idea and the launch has been successful, there's really a tendency to feel reluctant to make any changes to your concept in case you might throw the whole thing off the rails. This is extremely common. You're not the only person to have gone through this path, but whereby companies replicate their business models or services or products with the assumption it will fit in the Chinese market, that's not always the case. Or they will also go into the market with the least commitment and then have fear to progress to a limited liability company in order to grasp the opportunities that lie there. And this was truly highlighted in yesterday's webinar for companies that are acting as representative offices and are reluctant to go to the limited liability company route, either via WFOE or FICE. So if it isn't broke, don't fix it, as the saying goes. And it's false. Improvement is always possible. A business model that was well suited to your home market is unlikely to fit without some degree of adaptation, particularly in a market as dynamic, as large, and as culturally different as China. And if your gut instinct is telling you that change is required, or you're getting that same message from your team locally and your advisors locally, it's really important to listen to them. Open your mind to the possibilities that change to your business model can bring, and be prepared to wave goodbye to your original concept. Okay? It's got you this far, but it's time to move on. Now, on the downside, so with each of these reasons, I want to give you initially the common problem. So really the common problem is refusal to adapt. Now, on the other side of the coin, there are problems that could occur in China. So you may have listened to your staff, to your team, to your gut instinct, and you may be prepared to improve and adapt. But, the famous last words, but the government may prevent you from moving on. And this really does occur in China, where in order to grow, in order to increase your business scope, you are hit with a brick wall and you can't move forward. So the government does, in some instances, set limitations or criteria which need to be filled that are impossible to fulfill. So you need to be prepared for this as well. But the whole point of this slide is really to show that you need to have an open mind. You need to be flexible, you need to adapt, but you also need to realize that you are in China and complexities may arise even if you want to move down the line and grow your business. Reason 2, too much or too little involvement in detail. Now, it's quite natural for anyone who's gone through the rigors of launching a business to be somewhat obsessed with the details and to feel compelled to play a hands-on role in ensuring that work continues to be done to the same standard as when you launched. These are really noble sentiments to have, particularly in a market like China, where everything is foreign and can be restrictive and it can be complex. But as your business becomes more established, it's important to spend more time working on the business instead of in the business. And by this perspective, it may be more advantageous for you to outsource than keep everything in-house. Now, a good analogy for this is probably when you're looking at a ship. When you launch, you tend to spend most of your time in the engine room, keeping the boiler stoked and making sure that the ship keeps moving forward. But before very long, you need to get up to the bridge and plot your course. The farther your ship sails into uncharted waters, the more time you need to spend on the bridge, planning and plotting and making sure you avoid the rocks and icebergs. But ultimately, the boilers are stoked and the ship is still moving forward. The key is being on the bridge and making sure you're following the right path. Now, this all sounds like everyone is involved too much within their China operation. From my experience, about 5% of companies that I have met in reality have been too much involved. And 90%, 95% of companies I have met have had way too little involvement in their China business. Providing excuses like, China's too far away for me to get involved. I'm having time zone issues. I'm too busy with other business lines and sectors and jurisdictions. I don't speak Chinese, so I can't communicate. And the list goes on. And trust me, I've heard some shocking excuses in my past. You have made a considerable investment in time and, more importantly, in money to launch your business in China. Why do you suddenly stop paying attention just because you now have people on the ground or now you've got outsourced providers that are helping you to control your business? Don't complain if you can't read financial statements. All you have to do is get involved a little and say, I want to see financial statements written in English. What happens if you don't hop on a plane when you realize that your bank account is at zero? And trust me, this has happened to some companies who haven't paid attention. They realize one day from the next that their bank account is at zero and they still don't hop on a plane to China to figure out what's happened. You have employees starting a revolt. And revolt might be too strong a word, but you have agitated and disgruntled employees. What is stopping you from, again, hopping on a plane and calming those employees down so that your business runs smoothly? And I could give you so many different things that I've heard in the past. At a minimum, outsource to lawyers, accountants, consultants, marketeers, so you know your business is being handled in capable hands. At a minimum, have some things that are outsourced so you know you have somebody on your speed dial that you could call in case of any form of emergency. And definitely in the case of employee revolts or your bank account is at zero, these are periods where you really want your lawyer on speed dial. Obviously, this at a minimum will allow you to focus on your business. But your job is to control that company and make sure that it is following the path that it needs to follow. You need to be on the bridge of that ship, guiding your business so that it achieves what it wants to achieve. So just to sum up this slide, I've had clients that have been too much involved, who've realized they've been too much involved and they step back a little bit. And I've had, in the majority of cases, people who've just been too little involved within their China organization. And when they're too little involved, that's actually where things go airy. The third reason is insufficient care when hiring. Now, every successful company actually not even every successful company, I think every company agrees on one thing. A business is only as good as its people. Do your employees have the talent, the creativity, the inclination to take your business forward? And if not, it's time you started hiring people who do. Hiring in China does not sit comfortably with a lot of business people, most of whom start out on their own and regard employing staff as a necessary evil, rather than an opportunity for the business to grow in a way that they never envisaged. If hiring doesn't come naturally to you, seek help. If you're not sure how to employ talent in China, seek help. If you're not sure what the labor regulations are in China, seek help. There are plenty of recruitment experts, labor lawyers, payroll providers out there who can help you find people who truly deserve to be part of your great adventure of being in China, but who also you can control. And control meaning, that you know what the labor regulations are, that you need to have an employee handbook, that you know how the payroll is functioned and how salary calculations are made in terms of gross salary and social insurance and income tax. Now, a couple of tips on hiring and control. I say controlling very carefully because it's not that you want to control your staff. You do want to give them a sense of freedom, but you also want to make sure that they come to the office every day, particularly if you're living so far away. So there is some form of control that you want to implement. My experience in the last 15 years has been the following. Don't trust so quickly. This has truly been a big mistake of a lot of people. Don't trust somebody you've just hired and expect them to build the business and do everything that you say. People are people, right? They have their own minds and they may go in different directions. And my real belief is that trust needs to be earned. And the employee needs to prove it to you that they are loyal and trustworthy. And this can only take time. It can't happen overnight. It requires several trips where you meet your staff one-on-one, one by one, to get to know them on an individual basis and understand what their talents are, how they can be creative, and how they can bring your business forward. Now, obviously, there's a but. I do apologize. On every slide, there is a but. But be prepared for turnover. You are going to be spending a lot of time and a lot of money on training people who will take advantage of this and then leave your company after a year or two. It is still to this day extremely common. Whether they are leaving for a better work opportunity, they're leaving for a better salary compensation, there are so many different reasons. But turnover is still extremely high in China. It's aggravating, it's frustrating, it's irritating, especially if you're not there locally to deal with it. Quite honestly, I don't know how to use a better term, but it truly sucks to know that you're going to have turnover and that you're going to invest your time in training people and spending money on them. Because ultimately, people will help you grow and develop your business. So if you don't have them anymore, it will halt your business for a certain period of time. And I just want to emphasize here, every single company in China, whether you are manufacturing, whether you are trading, whether you're service-oriented, whether you're a foreign investor, whether you're domestically owned, state-owned, goes through this. So don't think that you are the only person in China that has high turnover. Almost every single firm has this issue. You're not alone. But like I said, seek help. The biggest help that has been the biggest help for me has always been to have continuous resumes coming into the company for nearly every single position that I had within the firm. This was and is my backup plan. Because if somebody departs, I know that I have a pile of resumes that I can quickly look through and call people to see if they would be interested in the position and interested then in an interview. And obviously, salary compensation comes into the play when you have that interview to see if it fits within your budget. But having this pile of resumes sitting right behind you on your desk, wherever in the world you might be sitting, where you can just pick up the phone and call people, it's a safety net for you, knowing if someone leaves, you've got a backup plan. And not just one resume, but a whole series of resumes to guide you. So keep this in mind. I do find that for most managers in China, HR is probably something they spend 50% of their time in terms of maintaining and controlling. So it is actually a big reason why some companies just can't seem to move forward. Reason 4 is number blindness. And this was something I highlighted in yesterday's webinar. So if for those of you that joined, I really went into the whole number blindness issue. On day 1, I highlighted that the tip of that day was to create a business plan and a budget. You can't grow and you can't expand in China without money. You need money in the bank and you need a sound financial plan. And for this, you need a good CFO in your headquarters who can guide you in the budgeting and controlling of your China company. If you've been doing the figures yourself up to this point, it's time to hand over the books really to an expert and concentrate on steering the ship. So a good CFO in China could be your most important hire of all, so having that in-house. And don't forget, you can also outsource this to accounting firms that also have that expertise. You don't want just a bean counter, but you want really somebody who's a visionary, who's either sitting in your headquarters or sitting locally in your China office, or is an outsourced provider who can interpret your figures, tell you where the business strengths and weaknesses lie, and use the data to help you plan your future course. In my experience, I've seen CEOs, CFOs wait too long to have that discussion. China, in fact, makes your life easy. And the reason behind this is that you need to do your accounts on a monthly basis, which allows you to review your monthly budget against your actuals and strategize on a monthly basis. If you're being forced to do this anyhow, in terms of submitting financials and paying taxes on a monthly basis, then review. Especially in your startup phase where you're really trying to grow your business and trying to expand. China's giving you that opportunity to do it. Take it. I will openly say that in my past life, I was not firm enough with clients to push them to do this on a monthly basis. And I truly believe this is something that a CFO or an outsourced provider should do. This should be part of their job. And obviously, this is something that I really, truly want to change, because my belief is if you don't have time to sit on a monthly basis, then at a minimum, sit on a quarterly basis to do a review of your budget against your actuals and strategize about the growth of your business. And have then this discussion with your various teams, whether it's the marketing team, the sales team, the logistics team, about how you're budgeting for cost, what does revenue look like, etc. You should really be looking at 3 documents every month, which is your cash flow statement, your balance sheet, and your P&L. Now, you got to keep in mind that in a lot of jurisdictions around the world, you are only required to produce financial management reports on an annual basis. My belief is, as a startup, particularly as a startup in the China market, you've just newly established your company. This is something really you should be focusing on a monthly basis. Regardless of what the regulation is, you need to know how things are progressing. And my experience has been when clients have been quiet on a month-to-month basis, now you've finished 12 months of the year, you have to sit down and do your audit. And I've had clients come to me and say, "Dear Lord, I'm shocked by the results. I wasn't aware of it." You should be aware of it. That's your role. You should be guiding the ship in the right direction, and you need to have all of the information at your fingertips in order to do that. Now, one thing that I've seen a lot of it's an extremely common mistake, is using your partner, whether it's your JV partner or a distributor or whomever that you've known for 20 odd years in the Chinese market, who says to you, well, I've got my own finance team and my own company. Why don't you just give me the work to do? I'm not going to charge you anything for it, and you'll get what you need to get done. You'll be compliant. You'll do your tax filings. This is extremely dangerous because you get so relaxed about the whole situation that you don't start asking questions, and then you get shy to ask questions because you don't want to upset your partner, right? It's just a vicious circle in this regard. Finance is a sensitive topic, right? We all know that. And most managers probably, if they're not in the finance sector, are not good with numbers. So it's something they shy away from. But looking at the numbers, understanding the numbers, and using those numbers to strategize is really what's going to help you expand and grow in the market. The fifth reason is market assumptions. Now, most businesses launch in China with some idea of who their customers might be and who their competitors are, but rarely do they do an in-depth market research. They may have done a couple of trips to China, done some on-the-ground research themselves for a 1 week, 2 week business trip, but they've never actually done either a market research study or a lengthier period of time in China to really research the market. They basically end up assuming they know without carrying out thorough research that they need to go into the market and they'll be successful in the market. The issue is that when the time comes for growth, you can't all of a sudden afford to go to a market and be scattered and have a scatterbrain approach to everything. You need to be focused. You need to have a focus. And that means knowing your Chinese customers in detail, right down to what they're talking about on social media. Similarly, the more you know about your competitors in China, the more you will know about your own business and what makes it different from your competitors. And this is really the route to success. So I do want to add on this topic. For those of you that are in the pre-investment stage of going into China, make sure at a minimum you create a business plan and you create a budget. And my recommendation would also be to include these 10 items as part of your local market research. So how large is the China market, and is it big enough to positively affect your business? What other companies are working within the China market already, and is there really an opportunity for you to bring something different to the market that will enable you to steal market share? How much of a financial investment is required to enter the Chinese market and operate effectively within it now as well as in the future? Can your existing business afford to reroute money and funds, employees, and resources to China? What kinds of technology investments and equipment and training are required to enter the Chinese market? What know-how do I have to bring into the Chinese market, and how do I protect that know-how? The new market might look attractive today, but what is the potential in the future, in 5, 10 years' time? Are there any legal, tax, or compliance issues that could negatively affect my success in terms of entering or operating in the market? Are the consumers in China an appropriate match for your existing brand or products, or do I need to tweak my brand and my product to cater to the Chinese market? What are the barriers to entry, and how can I overcome them quickly and affordably? And in terms of goals, why do you want to enter China? This is actually, when I ask some clients, why do they want to even come into China? They don't know how to answer me. This is probably the first question you should ask yourself. Why do you want to enter China? Is it truly right for your business? Does it match your ultimate business goals? So if you don't want to pay for an extensive market research study, at least at a minimum, look at these 10 points and try and find out how you can get that information, either by doing on-the-ground research yourself, or potentially giving it to a market research company that just focuses on these 10 points. Reason 6 is control freak leadership. I love how I worded that, control freak leadership. I used to be very much into this. I had an extremely bad experience in terms of um, um, giving too much trust to employees locally. It went very sour, so I've had that bad experience myself. And because of that bad experience, I became a control freak. And probably to this day, most of my old or former colleagues would probably say I'm still a control freak. But that's just because of the bad experiences that I've had in the past. But I'm aware of this fault that I have, and it is a fault. And the reason for having this fault is the fact that I lose staff very quickly because I don't instill trust and I don't empower them, and I sometimes don't encourage them to do more and to gain more responsibility. Growth doesn't come, I mean, I'm now contradicting myself a little bit, but growth doesn't necessarily come from a spreadsheet of just looking at numbers. You have to look at a variety of things, and it has to all be involved together in one circle. It has to all come together and mesh well together. But it's not all coming from a spreadsheet and the numbers. It comes from the whole culture of the company. You need your whole team to be aligned. You need your whole team to be energized towards the same goal that you have. And that means sharing a bit of power along the way. You may have kept a tight hold of the reins initially as you launched, but now it's time to delegate. Now it's time to empower your staff to take some responsibility themselves. But as I said, and as a precaution, do this over time. Do this step by step. But you've got to make sure that at some point you do it. Otherwise, you will lose staff. You won't be able to retain them. Make sure you developed trust and loyalty. I have only been able to get over that by physically traveling to China, meeting with my staff, having lunches with some of them one-on-one, asking them what they want to achieve in their own careers. Do they want more responsibilities? Some may say no. Some may say yes. You need to also find out what each of them likes to do, what they don't like to do. And the best way I found is by doing this myself and having these discussions. Obviously, if you're very large in the market, you'll have your own HR department, but you've got to make sure that the HR department does it. You might even want some of your team leaders to do that, to have these one-on-one discussions with the team, with the individuals, to understand what their goals and objectives are. But definitely over time, empower your staff and encourage them. Positivity is always something that they look for. Reason 7 is a marketing bias. And I think this is right now for a lot of brands extremely critical, as marketing has gone absolutely 100% digital in China. Does your company look like something you would expect it to find in the big business world? Or does it look inescapably small in China? Branding and marketing are essential for growth, not only to develop your business, but also to acquire new staff and new employees. Now, you might love that logo that you created when you launched your company, but is that logo really fitting your growth strategy and what you want to achieve? Sometimes you've got to swallow your pride and just rebrand, okay? From your business cards to your website, it's really about understanding your target market and where you're located. And I have to say that having been in China for 15 years, looking at websites that are geared towards Chinese, they are very differently created than Western websites. In fact, the whole market strategy is so different from the Western world, we don't even realize it. And this is where you really need expertise to come in to guide you through that process. Definitely be prepared in China to spend a chunk of your growth budget on marketing. If you want to be taken seriously among the big hitters, you need to look like a big hitter. And the time for keeping a low profile is over. You can't do it there. A key point that I want to highlight here is adaptation. What you're doing at home will not work in China. Full stop. If your target market are the Chinese, what you have at home, it doesn't work. What social media marketing you're doing on LinkedIn and on Twitter and Facebook does not match WeChat. You got to do things totally differently, and all in the Chinese language. Adapt your marketing to the Chinese market, adapt your brand to the Chinese market, adapt your website to the Chinese market. If I were all of you, I would take WeChat training classes to understand how important WeChat is for marketing purposes and survival in China. And I joke about that because truly nowadays, all you need is your mobile phone, the WeChat app, and you can do absolutely anything in China. You don't even have to carry a wallet around anymore. Understand the social media landscape. Learn what the Chinese like and don't like. Use focus groups. But ultimately, you can't do all of that without having an expert guide you and help you to do translations and all of that. So there is definitely and certainly a marketing bias. Reason 8 is cultural diversity. And I think this is really key, particularly for those small, medium-sized companies that have business owners. So as a business owner, you are your company. And as your company adapts itself to the Chinese market, so do you. This is notoriously tricky for several entrepreneurs to swallow, the need to change the personal image when entering a new market, particularly where it's such an extravagant cultural difference from probably what you're used to. So just as the image of the business needs to be suitable to the Chinese market, like I highlighted on the previous slide, you, as the figurehead to the company, you also have to adapt yourself to the diversity that is located in China. And you can do this through a lot of ways. But what I want to highlight on this slide most importantly is, and it sounds maybe for some people racist, but don't underestimate how important it is to have a foreign face join meetings and be the face to your company. When you meet government officers, when you're meeting clients, when you're meeting suppliers, your team on the ground has been able to start negotiations. They've been able to initiate meetings. But you, as the business owner, you will be the one that can close the deal. You. Clients want to see you at least once. They want to meet you. They want to shake your hand. They want to exchange business cards. They want to have a dinner with you. They want to gumbe with you. They want to have this connection with you that they've seen you. This will help you to close deals much faster than you can imagine, than if you solely rely on your team locally. So this is also what I mean, and I hope this highlights up to point 8. What I'm trying to focus on is don't ignore your company in China. Adapt yourself, adapt your company, and realize how you also can help to close big deals. Seeing the big boss places tremendous value on things like that. This is probably, when I created the slide, I thought this was hysterical. There's a lack of vision. So I'm joking. I'm not joking, but sharing is caring. Now I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old at home, and I use this term probably 5 times in a day, where sharing is caring, right? You need to have a collective vision. You need to respect each other. You need to be loyal to each other. You need to trust each other. And with as a collective unit, you will be able to grow your business. Sharing is caring is for me an important aspect of transparency, openness, trust, and loyalty. But like I said, this comes step by step, right? You don't want to share too much right from the beginning. You want to share step by step. But sharing does show to your team as months and years go on that you are becoming more and open with them. Take the time when you go to China on your business trips to sit down with everyone as a collective unit to share your vision for the market, the values that you want to instill within your organization. Provide insights to what your short and long-term goals are. Share stories about what's happening in the head office. You've got to imagine you have a team in China that are sitting there that probably aren't even in touch on a daily basis with your head office. They have nothing to grasp in terms of the overall picture of your company. So at a minimum, try to include them on, if you're able, on day-to-day discussions. Always have an open door policy. And again, this will help to build trust. Now, what I really want to highlight here is the following, is obviously, if you build trust and if you build loyalty, in the majority of cases, people are going to stay with you. But naturally, you're going to have people that leave. And unfortunately, you have the bad eggs in the basket who might even go off and copy and cheat your business and literally set up a company down the road. This has happened frequently enough in China. But what I do want to highlight is, don't assume that the bad folks are always the Chinese folks, because that's not the reality. In the last 5 to 6 years, I've actually seen that the bad guys can also be the Westerners that take advantage of your business, take advantage of the sharing is caring mentality, and set up a business down the road. And actually, I have a personal friend of mine who was the vice GM of it. Actually, no, he was the general manager of a manufacturing company in Shanghai. There was a country head who was a Westerner who literally set up a duplicate factory 7 kilometers away from that factory. And what he did was to minimize cost. He incurred all of his initial administrative cost within his existing company in order to lower it for the new company. And the only way that my friend found out that this was happening was because one employee that he had actually stolen sent out an email with the wrong signature. And he was looking into detail, which I said is something I learned. You got to look into the details, and found out what this company was, and that it was only 7 kilometers down the road, and who it belonged to, and all of that. So everything I tell you, there's always a but and something you have to be aware of, okay? So I truly do believe in sharing is caring. You need to have a collective vision with your team. But again, trust and loyalty has to come step by step. And be wary, right? It's not, I mean, I've seen a lot of Westerners always, hammer down on the Chinese. You'll also have some Westerners that cause conflict as well. And you just have to be aware of that. The last one is fear. Now, from my perspective, business owners and investors are courageous. They must be. It takes courage and appetite for risk to get a new venture off the ground, particularly in a jurisdiction that might be so far away from them. But they have the foresight and the vision to see what can be built and what can be grown. What I want to highlight on this slide is you don't have to do this all by yourself. You can get help. Help is at hand. And I was highlighting this actually on day one of my first webinar in this series, where you have associations, you have chambers, there are consultants, there are service providers, there are headhunters, lawyers, accountants, auditors. You have people with years of experience in the Chinese market. They are the experts. They've gone through the worst case scenarios and bad stories, and over, I'm sure, glasses of wine, they can share with you the experiences they've gone through that have definitely, it's like a roller coaster ride. You go through the ups and downs. But use them and pay them from day one of your China journey. I can't emphasize that more. I can 100% confirm with you that companies who have ventured into China without using external providers, but rather trusted someone locally, a partner they've known for 20 years, who's, if you've known someone for 20 years, they're your best friend. And whenever I hear these stories, you always then hear, but then the relationship went sour, and actually I spent more money on fixing the problem than I would have if I had just gone with external providers right from the beginning. I honestly, I hear this 100% of the time, always. Get the help that you need. Get the advice that you need. I understand when you're a startup and you're going to China and you've created your budget, you're limited on what you can spend. And the worst thing that you want to spend it on is outsourced providers. I totally agree with you. It's horrible, but they are the experts. They are the ones that can give you the advice that you need to get into the market. All right? Use them. Please use them. There are so many associations like the EU SME Center or the China Britain Business Council or the local chambers in China, as well as the trade commissioners that can all guide you and give you help that you need. Most of them give it also free of charge. So keep this in mind, okay? So finally, what I want to look at is my top tip for today, which, to basically sum up my discussion, is the following. Knowledge is power. You will only gain knowledge by on-the-ground experience and listening to your advisors. The more you listen to war stories, it sounds horrible, but it's really the reality. The more you listen to people's war stories in China, and the more you actually learn from the market, learn from your people, learn from your employees, learn from their experiences. Talk to your advisors, learn from your advisors. When you go to networking events in China, talk to the other companies. I can guarantee you over a glass of wine, everyone wants to share their war stories. And people, if the war story is over, they're able to laugh about it now. So it's something where you can really learn from your mistakes, from their mistakes in terms of how things work. And I truly believe this is how you'll also have greater success in the market. Don't ignore your company. Don't feign disinterest in your China company. You have invested time, you've invested money. Maybe not yours, but maybe your team in the UK or in mainland Europe or wherever you're located, they've invested time and money for this investment. Don't ignore it. Make sure you pay attention to it. So for those of you that might not be able to join tomorrow's webinar series, I want to highlight my 6 key words for doing business in China successfully. Create your business plan. Create your budget. Think about simplicity. You don't want to burden yourself with a complex structure in China. You want to create something in China that gives you freedom, that helps you to grasp at any opportunity that arises. And I truly believe that knowledge is power. The more that you know about running your business in China, the more successful you will be. Knowledge will give you the leverage you need to make sure that nobody takes advantage of you. And I think that's a key thing that you need to learn in China. So let's hit the Q&A. We have 10 minutes left in today's session. Nobody's written any questions. Apparently, I explained myself so clearly. If you do have specific questions, don't hesitate to contact me directly. I received 2 questions from the registration form. One of them is, I have received interest in my product from China and wish to explore the challenges around this specific industry. How do I go about doing this? So you're really at this pre-investment stage where you want to do market research. So you have several options that are open to you. The first is you can pay for a market research study, which, like I've highlighted in other webinars, will require you to probably read a 100-page report. Alternatively, you can do research on the ground in China through a type of incubation system that's offered by certain chambers and associations. where you can hire somebody on the ground and you can then get feedback on a daily basis or weekly basis about your specific industry, what challenges might exist, what opportunities might actually exist. And then from there, you go to the next step where if there are truly opportunities and you need to trade locally, where you can then set up your LLC. If our China partnership requires money to move from China to Europe or the UK, are there significant challenges to this? Unfortunately, yes, there are. When you want to move money out of China, there are complexities and there are restrictions. I could actually do an entire webinar just on this subject about how to repatriate funds and how to do just transfers. You will have complexities from banks. You will have complexities from the tax bureau. You will also have complexities from the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. Reason being is obviously the Chinese government doesn't want to see money moving out of China. They want profits to be kept in China. They want funds to be kept in China. Because hopefully you will use that to then further expand your business locally, hire more people, etc. It actually all makes sense. So they have placed restrictions when you want to repatriate funds, whether it's for dividends or you're developing a certain repatriation strategy, where there are specific processes you have to go to. It's not something that will happen overnight. I would assume you need to calculate a time frame of about 6 to 8 weeks to get the entire application completed before you can actually get the funds locally in Europe or in the UK. If you want to have more information on that, contact me regarding the specific transaction and I can guide you through it. So I have 2 questions that have come in. So people complain about China's staff, about being used to follow orders and having a lack of imagination. I'm smiling at this question. Do you agree that there must be a Westerner leading the team and leading the operation and leading the growth? So that's a very good question. And I can only give you my personal opinion. My personal opinion is the following. I think if you are a foreign invested company, I do think you should have a Westerner on the ground representing your company, because I think the two ties into each other. You are a Western brand. You should have a Western individual who knows that brand inside and out, who understands the philosophy of the company, who understands what the mission is of that company. And ideally, you want to second someone, because somebody who's already worked in another office, hopefully in the head office at least, has that feeling and vision and understanding of where the company is going. This person can also be the white foreigner for meetings and act as that representative, so you as the owner can maybe skip out on some of that. I still think it's important that some people see the business owner though, okay? I do think, however, that we are in 2018, and if you want to have a local company, you should not necessarily have this foreigner be the general manager. I think you should have a dual management system, if you can afford it, where you have the Westerner and you have a local. By showing this unity of the Westerner and the local coming together, working together, it will also show to your team and your staff unity and cultural diversity, and that you guys are willing to learn from each other, okay? The issue about lack of imagination. When I first started out in China, I remember I didn't speak Chinese at that time, and that was probably the push which made me learn Chinese, was the fact that whenever I asked a staff to contact a government office, I asked them to ask a question, and I would always get a yes or no response, and that was it. I never got an explanation, nothing. And there was no out-of-the-box thinking about what was the second or follow-up question to ask based on the response from the government. And I used to get so frustrated because we had cases where I would sometimes have the staff calling the government at least 3 to 4 times in a row to ask for more information. At which point I was like, oh, I just wish I could do this myself. It'd be so much faster. But I came to realization where it was also my role and my duty to teach them how to think outside of the box. Okay? You got to understand a little bit about the education system in China, and I only understood it based on talking with my team. The education system in China is very much memorization and regurgitation. There's very little thinking outside of the box. You can't blame anyone. That's the education system in China. So if you want your team to think outside of the box, you've got to also train them to think outside of the box. Okay, so that's where I think having a Westerner locally do that is amazing if you're able to do that. But it just takes time. And I'm at fault at this, but I also have a lot of clients who've been at fault of this. Don't get angry with them because you're so frustrated. It's truly not their fault that they're not thinking outside of the box. It takes time. It takes practice. It's a very different way of approaching business. And I totally agree with you. It still happens, unfortunately, today, but this is where training needs to be involved. I didn't place a lot of emphasis on training in the past, and I do want to highlight that here. The chambers of commerce and the associations offer a lot of trainings. Use them. I think, especially for your Chinese staff, I think it's great. And for you as a Westerner, definitely go to a WeChat training to learn how vital and important it is. But use those trainings because usually they're taught by a Westerner, and it will help and guide your team and guide your staff. So if you can, and you can afford it, have a dual management system. It also means, quite frankly, you'll have 2 spies who report to you about the behavior of both, right? Not that you want them to have a war against each other, but you'll have definitely more information from both in terms of how the locals are managing within the company and how the Westerner is managing within the company. And I'll get you more ideas regarding that. So Andrea, I hope I was able to answer that. Just to add on to that, you will see a lot of companies nowadays localizing, and that's really a cost issue. Unfortunately, we're all on very tight budgets, whether you are a small company or whether you're a multinational or publicly listed company, we're all on extremely tight budgets. And most companies that have been well established in China for a certain period of time, and I'm talking 10, 20 years, they are localizing because the head office is extremely familiar with the market. They also have a team that's in place that's probably been very loyal and trustworthy, so they're scaling back on the amount of Westerners they're hiring. The next question is from Wenju, whether she can share the video today. Yes, so this webinar session has been recorded. Please all give me some time. I'm converting all the webinars into a format that I can then distribute. They will also go up on my YouTube channel as well as on the website. I will be sending out emails to you individually regarding them. Please, please, please do be patient, and you will all receive the PowerPoint presentation as well. As I've highlighted, if any of you are in need of a free consultation, please don't hesitate to contact me. Happy to help you with your specific needs. And don't hesitate to follow our free newsletter. One was not sent out this week. The next one will be sent out next week. Usually I'm sending out new publications, so new articles that have been written. You can find old articles already on our website. Sometimes I'll send out free webinar recordings, podcasts, but it's free of charge, and I only send it out once a week, so you'll only be spammed once a week. But you can easily subscribe on the homepage of our website by simply inserting your email address, or follow us on social media. We have a LinkedIn company page, Facebook page, Twitter page. We're also on YouTube. And on Xing, which is a German platform. You can also connect with me personally, not a problem. And I appreciate you all coming in today. Tomorrow we'll be talking about 4 reasons why your profit margin might not be as good as you would like it in China. We'll be focusing on that tomorrow. So if you'd like to subscribe to that or register to that, the registration is still open to everybody. And I look forward to seeing you all there as well. Have a great afternoon, have a great morning, have a great day, and I'll see you all very soon. Thank you and goodbye.